was fresh out of high school, me and my friends went for a camping trip, since it would be the last time we saw each other before college sent us on our separate ways. We had planned to go deep into the national forest in the mountains and just enjoy ourselves for a few weeks. My friends who came along were Preston, a Native American who had several years of survival strategies under his belt. Jamie, a hunting and gun enthusiast like me with a propensity for adventure. Mark, Preston's friend, not so much mine. He smoked a lot of drugs and seemed to be okay, but I was always on edge around him. With us, we packed 2 tents, dry fruit, rice, jerky, camping supplies, and beer, along with a Mini 14 rifle, a Sag 12 shotgun, 2 pistols, my Taurus Judge revolver, and Jamie's .357 revolver. We packed all this into my battered BMW station wagon, with me being the driver. Stopping at the car park, we loaded up the gear on our backs and began going deep into the forest. The first day was uneventful. Preston found a good clearing for us to settle at. We settled down our gear and set up the tents while Preston got to work with cooking a fire. I was always good at setting up tents, so it wasn't a problem for me. Within 20 minutes, we had set up basic camp. I cracked open a beer and sat next to Preston, who had created a roaring fire. I smiled at him. I patted him on the back. "Let's enjoy this," he responded. Jamie and Mark were carrying on, exploring around the area. At the time, I could have sworn I saw a pair of green eyes and antlers looking at me. I would come to regret not asking Preston in the coming days. I tried to forget as we sat down to dinner that night. Campfire curry, a mix of curry spices, frozen chicken we brought and prepared with a few vegetables, along with a small pot of rice. As it was our first night, we made sure to eat all our perishables. It was tasty for sure. Then, like we were kids once again, we roasted marshmallows and made s'mores. It truly was a very fun time, for sure. If only it would have lasted. That night was uneventful as well. I slept like a baby, and Preston, who I shared a tent with, didn't seem to be bothered at all. The next morning, we packed up camp and decided to head south, towards a large river, with the intent of spending a few nights by the riverside. As we were in a remote wilderness, I handed Preston my Mini 14, and I myself carried the Sag 12 slugs and buckshot alternate in a 10-round magazine. Jamie kept his .357, and I had my sidearm as well. We walked for what seemed like an hour. The mistiness, overcast weather, and lack of clear landmarks required us to rely on our GPS and compass. We headed south. I saw the look on Preston's face. He was worried. "Preston, what's up, man?" I asked him. He had me get close, and he whispered, "I don't know, man. I got a bad feeling, like a bad omen is about to pass. Everyone, just keep in sight. I'll listen for anything." As he said that, we heard what sounded like a distant whooping noise. All of us looked around. In the distance behind us, we could have sworn we saw something shambling. The sound would have been too far to shoot with my shotgun, so I pointed at Preston and told him to shoot. "Shoot that thing!" 3 shots from the Mini 14 and the smell of freshly fired ammo filled my nostrils. Whatever it was got down on all fours and bounded away. "What the hell was that?" Mark asked, shocked. Preston swore up and down in his native language before he finally said, "That, my friends, is something truly evil. We need to hurry to the river, quick." We ran for about 30 minutes, our pace slowed by the amount of heavy gear we carried. Preston looked from side to side, but found nothing as he did so. Soon, we reached the rushing river, and with that, the fog seemed to dissipate. Preston looked around, shook his head, looked at his GPS, and finally said, The other side of the national forest is available to us across the hand tram a mile upstream. We can make it there before lunchtime if we hurry. Preston, what's going on? What was that thing? Jamie asked, concerned. I can't be sure, but it's nothing good. I want to try to lose it across the tramway. Whatever that thing is, if it's anything like my family's stories, it won't ford a river. Where we're going, that's final. Preston led the way up the river, keeping close to the shoreline. Eventually, we did find it. A large steel and wood car suspended over the wide expanse of the river. I got in first and wasted no time getting across. I watched the trail on the other side, while Jamie went across next with some of the extra gear, and then finally, Preston and Mark squeezed into the tram and got across. As I turned to leave, I saw Preston take out his bowie, and he began hacking at the rope suspending the tram. What the fuck are you doing, man? That's a state property. That's a felony, I said, bewildered. We can't have that thing following us. He hacked the rope until it snapped, and the tram car fell with a loud clang into the river below. As we left, we started heading east. I could have sworn I saw those green eyes again, but just for a moment, watching us. We made camp at the clearing of the edge of the hill's wide range. It gave us great views and visibility, but more importantly, as Preston stated, we could see anybody or anything coming. As he sat and made the fire, he said, "Okay, we're doing watch rotations. That thing, I'm genuinely afraid of." "I bet it's just a bear, Preston. Too many family stories," Mark gruffed. As I said previously, he was Preston's friend, not mine. I took a second watch after Preston cooked a meal of rice pudding. I had no trouble staying up. Then Jamie. I sat up and talked to him for a while. He was a little worried, and he expressed that he wanted to go home. "I know what you mean, dude. This is too creepy." Mark took the last watch, my shotgun propped up next to him to the tent in case he needed it, or so Jamie told me. When we got up the next morning, Mark had disappeared. Immediately, we questioned Jamie, whose story checked out. He saw Mark up and watching. We waited. Preston reignited a few vapors. He also pulled out a small can of pine tar and began making torches. What's that for, Preston?" Jamie asked. "I'm sure of it. We've got a Wendigo," Preston replied. "A Wendigo? What the fuck is that?" I replied. "It's a cannibalistic demon with green eyes. A deer skull for a head, and a thirst for human blood. They're also like skinwalkers, you know, like in the show True Blood." At the time, the TV show was popular, or so he explained. I became very scared. So that grabbed Mark and ate him? I don't know. We'll wait for Mark for a few hours. Keep the guns locked and loaded. If you see him, don't let him approach within 200 feet of the campsite. I'm going out for a bit. "You're crazy, Preston," I protested. He whispered in my ear. "When I come back, ask me my favorite sailor. It's Saturn, for the record." He then approached Jamie and told him something that I knew I wasn't supposed to hear. Then he grabbed 2 torches, his knife, and turned his back on us. "Wendigos don't like fire. Keep the fire going. There's plenty of sticks and wood right here for a few hours. I'll be back. Don't forget what I told each of you. If I can't answer it, then when I come back, shoot me." As he disappeared into the forest, I sat with Jamie back to back. He took my shotgun, but it's okay because I had the Mini 14. For hours, we heard various sounds in the forest, including those whooping noises. The sound of what sounded like Mark, and what I thought was the sound of a distantly beating drum. By the afternoon, we heard rustling in the forest, and none other than Preston returned, dirt smeared on his face, and a makeshift drum under his arm. With one torch left, he stopped short of the campsite when I raised my gun at him. "What's this about, guys? It's me, Preston," he said. "Yeah, prove it. What's your favorite Final Fantasy protagonist?" Jamie asked. "Well, Squall, of course." Jamie lowered his gun. "What's your favorite sailor?" I asked slowly and deliberately. "Saturn, of course. I suppose it means Mark is still missing, yeah?" he responded. I lowered my gun and said, "Come on up." And yeah, we heard whooping noises, but no sign. Preston averted his gaze. "It's hunting us. I confirmed the tracks. My little serenade and tribal chants caused it at one point to come and look at me." "How did you get away?" I asked. "I chased it with fire. They're afraid of it, remember?" he responded. "What about guns? Do guns harm them?" I asked slowly. Yeah, I can injure them, but you really need fire or silver. We only have fire as usual. We're going to have to burn down one of the tents and drop some gear. We're going light. We're heading to the highway. It's 35 miles to the east, but we can get there over 2 days, but we'll need to double our night rotations. And if you see anything that looks like Mark, he's a dead guy. I'm sure of it," Preston responded. I was very afraid at this point. The sinking feeling that my idea could have gotten everyone killed. I took charge. "We will do 15 miles today and 20 tomorrow. We'll hitch a ride back to the car. We'll burn our trash as we move. We'll burn the tent tomorrow morning. Let's go now." We hastily packed up what we could carry and burned much of the non-essentials. We hurried throughout the afternoon and early evening, running when we could, and walking as quickly as possible when we couldn't. The whooping call continued to seem to follow us at a distance. I didn't, however, see antlers or green eyes when I looked back. Eventually, we found a clearing that was decently sized, had good visibility and sticks. We hastily gathered the firewood. All staying as a group, we pitched camp. That dinner was cold jerky and dried fruit. Preston was unwilling to attract attention from smell, but he did create several pine tar torches and set them out on the outskirts. We didn't say a word, but me and Preston took first watch, then Jamie and Preston, then me and Jamie. We continued every 2 hours until the daytime. As day broke, we heard screaming. Mark's voice came from the woods, crying for help. Preston shook his head. "It got him. We can't do anything about it. It's over." We burned the tent and continued traveling throughout the day. That's when I saw it. Today was the day it didn't decide to hide anymore. The Wendigo was about 7 feet tall. Its limbs were blackened, 2 glowing green eyes set into a deer's skull with antlers. Soft whooping noises. It kept itself at a distance. I pulled my revolver and aimed at it. About 250 feet away, firing, I hit it in the chest. It barely flinched. The thing turned and stared at me. Preston began to shout at it aggressively in his native language. It stopped, tilted its head, and then responded to him. I asked him, "What the hell did it say to you?" I asked him what he did with Mark, and he responded, "Who's that?" Preston then grabbed the Mini 14 and fired repeatedly at him. This abomination seemed to be getting annoyed. I followed up with a well-placed slug to the chest from my shotgun. It howled in pain and dashed into the woods. We better run, I think," I remarked to the group. We ran for a good 20 minutes when suddenly in the clearing ahead of us was a human silhouette, naked and filthy. It was Mark. Oh, guys. Oh, thank God. It's me. You gotta take me back. I escaped that thing and I've been running from it for the last day. I pointed my shotgun at Mark. What happened to your clothes? Yeah, if you're Mark, tell us the name of the school we went to, Preston said. He pointed the rifle at his head. Come on, guys, don't play around with me. It's me. I'm cold. I'm hungry. I just want to go home, he protested. Jamie shot him in the leg with his revolver. Mark screamed in pain. Unless you want the next one to your head, answer the fucking question, Jamie shouted. That's when Mark's head snapped back in a grotesquely unnatural fashion. It was paralyzed by fear as it appeared as if Mark was contorting and screaming in unnatural tones. I fired repeatedly. All the remaining shells in my magazine. It just seemed to shred in the upper skin. When I knew the gun wasn't working, I remembered Wendigo's hated fire. I grabbed my lighter and a can of bug spray. I dashed at the thing that was once Mark, spraying it with fire from my makeshift flamethrower. As I burned it, Preston laid down 2 entire magazines, and then dumped the rest of his pine tar on it, and Jamie emptied his revolver. When it finally stopped screaming and moving, we were left with a mutilated and charred corpse, half Mark, half Wendigo. We all threw up. Preston began to butcher the corpse and said, I've got to destroy the corpse. It's only right that I do this. For an hour, Preston burned and cut up the corpse, and then cut the heart out. He put it into a plastic bag and then shoved it into his jacket. It took us another few hours to reach the highway. Preston sat on the sidewalk and began to cry as Jamie kept the hitchhiker thumb out. I sat next to him and asked, What are you going to do with the heart? I'll take it to the reservation. There, my elders will have to know that these things are still out there. And we have to protect those from these monsters. He clenched his fist. I'll wipe them out myself if I have to. For Mark. By evening, a sympathetic farmer stopped and let us ride in the back of his truck as he drove us to town. From there, I paid for a cheap hotel room, and we breathed a sigh of relief. The next day, we returned to my car. Thankfully, it started. It goes without saying, we weren't going to stick around, and we decided to leave the forest immediately. After that, I didn't talk to Preston for about several weeks. He eventually showed up at my house during the summer and asked my father if he could stay a night or two. At the time, I was still living at home. Preston told me the elders were shocked when he showed them the heart, and he told me that they had amassed a party to take care of it. They came back with the skull of 2 Wendigos and 6 hearts, but they also found scraps of Mark's t-shirt surrounded by a pile of decaying gore. This day, Preston, Jamie, and me have a pact to never tell anybody about the horror that we witnessed. I only break this pact now, years later, and because we can safely say that it's behind us, at least for the present. My advice, if you hear whooping noises and see green eyes and antlers, run or fight it with fire. Guns can cause it pain, but only fire or silver can kill it. Each day I pray that these abominations are gone and that they've been wiped out, but in my heart, I know that's not true. So the next time you're out in the woods, be safe, everyone.